Hi, everyone. This is Alisa Rettschlag. I am an ITA, Idaho Trails Association crew leader, and I am on here presenting tonight Backpacking 101, the part 1 version tonight. And there's two other people that are helping me present tonight, so I'll have them introduce themselves. Tom?
I'm Tom Dabrowski. I'm a member of the board of directors of ITA and also a crew leader. I'll be talking a little bit this evening about food, and then I'll do part 2 in 2 weeks when we talk about more about gear.
Kelly?
Hey guys, I'm Kelly. I'm just running everything from the back, so hopefully you won't hear from me again as long as everything goes as planned.
Well, we'll get started. I wanted to tell you a little bit more about Idaho Trails Association. We were founded in 2010 to keep Idaho hiking trails open for all. We help the Forest Service and different organizations do that. We do that through caretaking of the trails. We use traditional skills such as the long saws you see in the picture there. Some of them are dated back to like the 1800s. And we have people that are very skilled at keeping them sharp. And we use Pulaskis and McLeods and all kinds of things that would be fun for you to learn. Education and awareness as well, and advocacy and protection of those outdoor trails. So you can join us on a volunteer project. We have single day, weekend, week long, and this year we started one 3-week immersion trip where you apply and then people will, fill the trip. We also have women only, so women in the wild, youth, university. This year we have a veterans trip, family friendly trips with kids, and then of course, backpacking 101. For many trips, there's no experience necessary to join. If you go to our website, idahotrailsassociation.org, you can look at the project list and it will give a rating on how difficult a trip will be, and you can judge for yourself if you need experience or not. I'm forgetting about this. Some upcoming fun webinars to stay tuned for are safety and first aid webinar on May 10th at 7 p.m. our time or 6 p.m. Pacific time. Trail talks for backcountry nutrition. That's May 25th at 6 p.m. Pacific and 7 p.m. Mountain time. And of course, if you're a backpacker or if you're just out hiking in the wilderness, like all of us, apparently, we're here for a reason. So you're probably tuning in because you like to hike. I'm just checking the chat really quick because I always forget to do that. Yes, there is an email list. Actually, Kelly can talk more about that in a minute. So about the trail reporter, this is just we really need trail reports. And so if you're out hiking this summer, for example, or this spring or in the fall, and you are hiking a trail that is not very well maintained or just needs a lot of work, you can go to idahotrailsassociation.org and then go to Trail Reporter. I think it's under the Get Involved tab. Go to Trail Reporter and it will bring you to a survey that you can fill out. It's super important for us to just know what trails need work. Why is ITA teaching backpacking? Well, during the pandemic, especially, a lot more people started using trails. I mean, it's just become a really popular thing, which is really great. And a lot of popular locations are really suffering damage, such as one of them that comes to mind is like Hell Roaring Lake, which is a very popular destination in the Sawtooth. there's just a lot of people that go there because it's so beautiful, but unfortunately in use, it ends up suffering damage. And there's other trails that are not maintained. Trees fall across them. And so we like to teach backpacking so that people will get involved with ITA. But so we believe that if we train people to do the right thing, they will do the right thing. And of course, ITA needs more volunteers. So we're hoping that you would join us. Backpacking 101, this is part 1. And so we're going to talk about safety, care for your feet, the 10 essentials, essentially what you need to think about taking with you to stay safe, managing heaviest items, cooking, and then leave no trace. And, of course, we'll cover all those, so you don't have to explain them now. On the second go around, on part 2, you'll be Tom's going to talk to you about what to carry, items to buy, how to pack your backpack, and then tips for an easier trip, and then a plan to be safe. Backpacking 101 with this webinar also has trail projects. So whatever you learn here, a certain number of people on a trip can join a trail project to kind of put these skills into practice. Navigation trail is the one up north that Tom will be leading, and I will be leading the Marsh Creek trip. Navigation trail is on June 24th and 25th. You can see that there. And Marsh Creek is later in the summer in July. Like I said, the second webinar for this Backpacking 101 is April 25th at 12 p.m. Mountain Time. So it's at noon, or of course earlier for Pacific time. You can go to idahotrailsassociation.org and go to the events and sign up. Thanks. Okay, let's get started. Let's talk about the safety. My background, sort of, I spent 10 years in Idaho Mountain Search and Rescue, and safety was always a really big thing for us. We taught a lot of community safety, like we would go out to the community and teach classes on safety and how to stay found and what you need to think about. So the biggest thing, even before you leave the house, is to make a plan for your backpacking trip. Instead of like driving down the road and you're like, hey, I'm going to go backpacking there and I have my backpack with me. That's probably not the best way to start. Get a map out, find a plan, find a route, and most importantly, tell somebody where you're going. Make sure they know. Actually leave them a map. Tell them when you're expected back. That's always huge for safety. You don't want to like start a rescue for yourself. And then carry the right stuff. The 10 essentials is a good guide. We will talk about that shortly. Stay alert while hiking. A sprained ankle is going to ruin your trip. So just make sure you know if there's fires in the area, for example, don't go to that area. I have a great story about that, but I probably will waste time talking about it. But fires you can't outrun a fire. So don't go to a place that already has a fire. Another one is if an area has flooding, you probably don't want to go there either because water is another danger. But even just hiking, you want to stay alert for animals, for trip hazards, for, just try to watch yourself. Anyway, if an emergency occurs, stop. Don't continue hiking or don't, make a bad decision. Emergency things include like having a plan for in case of emergency. And actually the 10 essentials kind of prepares you for that. We'll talk about that in a little bit. One of the websites that you can check out is hikingadventure.com. It has some safety tips for safety on the trail. 10 essentials. So I talked about this and I always think I should develop a heuristic for this, but I never do. One of the big things is shelter. A tent, a bivy, tarp, hammock, a plastic bag. Whenever I go out on even a day hike, I always think, if something happens, is there some way that I can make a shelter for myself to stay out? Because shelter, in the end, in an emergency, is probably more important than water or food, because shelter is going to save your life. You can prevent yourself from getting hypothermic, or in a heat situation, you can prevent yourself from overheating. Navigation, map and compass. Make sure you know how to use a map and compass. A map is only good as the paper it's printed on if you don't know how to use the map, and you don't know how to start by staying found. And so if you do decide to go that way, make sure you know how to use the map and compass. They have great books on orienteering. They have actually clubs for orienteering. GPS. A GPS is, if anybody's ever used a GPS before, it uses satellites to locate your location. You could actually combine a GPS with a map and compass and teach yourself while you're backpacking how to orient. Phone apps have been incredibly useful, and the technology is incredible. So phone apps, there's different types of subscriptions to download maps of areas that you're going to offline. And it's kind of worth paying the subscription so that you have those maps downloaded. But the main thing is you have to download the maps before you leave so that you actually have the map on your phone. And if you're going to bring a phone on a backpacking trip, I would suggest bringing a battery pack to recharge, a battery pack and the cord. Illumination, it really sucks to be out there and it gets dark and you don't have any way to see. And a headlamp is very useful because you can put on your head and still use your hands. I would say you could use your phone, but you still have your phone in your hand. So a headlamp is pretty useful. Clothing and insulation, once again, this kind of comes back to survival. You know, wear the right hiking clothes. I always wear long pants and long sleeve shirts. I've seen people wear shorts, that's fine. Just whatever you're comfortable in, but you know, like make sure your clothes are sturdy and good and lightweight and quick dry. Like cotton is always a bad choice for backpacking. Rain gear is something that people overlook because they think I'm in southern Idaho and it doesn't rain very often. It rains like 12 inches a year. And so maybe they forget to bring rain gear. Rain gear is ironically super important because it rains in the mountains suddenly. Like it could just have a deluge really, and then you're wet and you're soaked and you could get cold. And rain gear additionally is another way of sheltering. So you could use your rain gear as an emergency shelter. Warm jacket, it gets cold at night. Warm hat, it gets cold at night. Extra socks, you want to change your socks because they'll get wet while you're hiking. You sweat, your feet actually sweat. And so you need extra socks to change out of your hiking socks. A sleeping bag, sleeping pad, sleeping clothes. Sleeping clothes, Tom will talk about this in his presentation, keeps your sleeping bag clean. So it's good to bring just you can even have a minor set, a very lightweight set of sleeping clothes. It doesn't have to be thick stuff, but he'll talk about that more. Hydration, you want some way to put the water, something to put the water in, which it sounds intuitive, but it's some people don't think about that. Like they just have a life straw and they think they can just suck from a creek or something. Well, you probably want a water receptacle. You want to not have to do that all the time. And then water filter or purifier. A lot of people that I know do drink out of creeks and surface water. That's fine, but you do need to know that you may get sick and it could actually really ruin your trip. A water purifier or filter is always a good idea. Food, lightweight and nutritious. Tom's going to talk about that in a minute. Sun protection, again, it's just like shelter or anything else. You don't want to get overheated, and you definitely don't want to get a sunburn, because that will ruin your trip too. So sunscreen, a hat, sunglasses, all of those are really important. Sunglasses, additionally, that's eye protection for you. If you go through bushes and such, I mean, there are so many times that my sunglasses have saved my eyes from getting like scratched from a rose bush or something. First aid, blisters and burns mainly, because burns meaning like you'll touch the stove, you'll grab a stove and it's hot. Blisters, of course, from just hiking, but also you might have minor cuts. I was on a hiking trail when somebody broke the bottom of their fibula. And so that's another one. But one of the things with first aid is that you can look up wilderness first aid classes, either through Knowles, or they have actually some locally. Just type in Google, wilderness first aid. And the best thing you can do is take a class, because you can actually use the things in your pack to make a splint for your friend or whoever who might have broken their bone or even sprained their ankle. And so it's super useful. But as far as first aid kits, concentrate on the burns and the blisters and maybe minor cuts.
Alisa, something we can mention to everyone is that ITA also provides a wilderness and remote first aid class for our crew leaders. And as time goes by, we may be able to offer that to more ITA members or volunteers that go on the trips.
Oh,
it's a
that'd be
great class.
Yeah, that would be cool. I forgot about that. Yeah, that would be great. Repair kit. I know this sounds like, you think of repair kit, a big kit, but it's only a knife. You want duct tape and paracord. You can do a lot with all of those. A knife, well, a knife is a knife. You could even eat with a knife. Duct tape, you use it in first aid. We'll get to that. And paracord, you can, like, even with first aid, you can create a splint and you'll use the paracord to make, secure everything. But paracord can be used to hang your food, which we won't be covering in this presentation. That's more of a field exercise. And then fire, don't forget a lighter, stove and fuel, cook pot, and utensils. Tom will talk a little bit more about that. Care for your feet. So purchase a good pair of backpacking boots. These are in parentheses because, like, when I hike and I'm not on an Idaho Trails Association trip, I wear trail runners. And so, but I use my trail runners a lot before I backpack. And so that's what I want you to do. If you buy new boots, don't go on your backpacking trip the next day. You want to break them in, make sure you know where the problem areas are going to be on your feet. Make sure you know, like, oh, okay, these shoes cause a little bit of a rub on the outside of my toe, so that you can protect that area if you still want to use those shoes. On Idaho Trails Association trips, because we're doing trail maintenance and we are using tools that could potentially really harm your feet, and you don't want a log falling on your toe, we actually require you to wear boots. But for just backpacking, you can wear the shoes you want, but just really do use them a lot before backpacking. And hiking socks, no cotton. Cotton, like I said before in the 10 essentials, cotton retains water. It doesn't dry out. It'll cause blisters. It'll cause like weakness in the integrity of your skin. And so purchase good hiking socks. Smart Wool. Can you guys think of other brands?
Darn tough.
Darn Tough. That's right. That's one of my favorites. Anything that's not cotton, the wool socks are really great because they dry quickly. And then if you get hot spots, which are just rub marks on your feet, things that hurt, but they're not quite a blister yet, stop and fix them before they become a blister. Don't wait, just stop there. And usually a hot spot is caused by like dirt or a little pebble that gets under there, or maybe a wrinkle in the sock. I mean, it's usually a pretty easy fix. And clean your feet every day. So if you're going on say a 5-day backpacking trip, every day, once you're done backpacking or hiking for the day, take your shoes off and soak them in the water. Or if there's no water, make sure you clean them off with maybe your bandana or something. And then take your boots off in camp. Make sure you bring camp shoes. If you have bad feet, it can really spoil your trip. Looks like we have some questions here. Let me just check the chat.
Nope, that one was okay, Alisa. Someone said they really love the wool that they knit from their sheep.
Oh, okay. I'll just let you look at that, Tom. I'll just let you monitor that stuff. Just stop
Okay.
me if there's a question I need to answer or you can answer. Okay. Anything important? This will be emailed out to everybody, by the way. So this presentation, along with all the resources, will be emailed out to you. So yeah, thanks. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so say you do get a blister. We're going to talk a little bit about blister care. It depends on two things. Depends on, oops, I don't know what happened here. Size. So if your blister is larger than a quarter, pop it. If it's smaller than a quarter, don't pop it. You just want to protect it. Okay. The other thing is location. So if your blister is in a location that is hard to protect or to prevent from more friction, you need to pop it. And so that's kind of like, I always get blisters on my little toes because they're being smashed by my other toes and it's really hard to protect. And so I always have to remember, okay, that's one of my weak areas. And so I'll try to mitigate the damage before. But one thing about blisters is that, I don't know how to say this properly, less is more. So if you think, oh, I'll just tape up all my toes, the tape itself could end up causing more damage. And so just wait until you have the hot spot, take care of the hot spot. If you have weak areas, protect those early on. Those are the only parts of your foot that you should be protecting. And then once you get the blister, then you have to just go into blister mode. So like I said, larger than a quarter, pop the blister. If it's smaller than a quarter, don't pop, just protect. And the way you protect it is, oh, well, if you have a large, I'm backing up. If you have a large blister like this guy or girl, and this is about a quarter size, you want to pop it. And so you want to drain it. Wash your hands, of course, or sanitize them. Clean the area around the blister and clean over the blister. And then heat a pin. Usually I actually keep a safety pin like clipped to my backpack. So it's pretty readily, I mean, believe me, I have tons of experience with blisters. My feet are just blister magnets. Yeah, there's very few shoes that really work for me. And then heat the point of the pin or the knife, whatever you're using, and poke it about 3 or 4 times in on the edge, and then push down on it. The water comes out, and then you can apply petroleum jelly, or if you want triple antibiotic ointment to the blister area, the petroleum jelly acts as like and the triple antibiotic ointment would act as a skin barrier. My problem with triple antibiotic ointment is that in the triple part, there's neomycin. And neomycin, a lot of people have a sensitivity to neomycin. And what happens is the area around the area that they put the triple antibiotic ointment onto becomes red. So they put more triple antibiotic ointment on, which makes it worse. And do you see my point? And then then it really does get infected. And so I would probably just bring some petroleum jelly or something if you're going to do it that way.
Alisa, Joe had a question about should you take the top if you drain the blister? Should you take the skin off the top of the blister or leave it intact?
Great question. I would leave it intact because it'll act as a protectant until you get home. And then actually it kind of dries out and you can just pull it off. It'll just fall off. So then cover the blister with the top on as if it was an open wound. So you can put a bandage on it. And then I would actually secure something over the bandage so the bandage is not going to like rub and cause more problems. I would take a piece of duct tape and put it all the way around, like on that area. So a fairly large piece of duct tape. And you can also use a donut. You can make a donut. I'll talk about this in just a second. Out of duct tape or K-tape or what you call it, moleskin, to protect that area if you want to, like put it around the blister and then cover the whole thing with duct tape or another piece of tape. And then change your socks. You know what I do sometimes? I actually take my socks and I turn them inside out if they're not too dirty. It's actually a great way to save your socks and you save your feet. In fact, maybe I should back up to the hot spots. When I have a hot spot, this is exactly what I do. I take my shoe off, I turn my sock inside out, and then I make sure there's no sand or dirt in my shoe. And then I put my shoe back on and it usually fixes the hot spot. So to protect a blister, you're just going to make a donut like what is pictured here. So you clean the blister, clean your hands, clean the blister, the area around the blister, and then you can take a piece of moleskin and cut just a half moon shape in it, the size of the blister, and then unfold it, stick it on there, cover the whole thing in duct tape or another piece of moleskin. But moleskin's kind of thick, and so I actually like duct tape just because it sticks better on your foot and it doesn't like roll up where the moleskin might roll up a little bit. And make sure you smooth it out so that there's no wrinkles, because the wrinkles may cause hot spots. Any questions about that? Okay. So here's some blister care supplies that you might add to your first aid kit. These corn cushions, I love these because they're already in the shape of a donut, essentially. It's a pretty quick way to just put it around your blister and then cover it with duct tape. And of course, moleskin, the K-tape is pictured with the guy's knee. K-tape is actually stretchy and it's used by PTs to brace a joint so that it doesn't go over like a torn meniscus or something, but it works well for some people. It doesn't really work for me, but my husband uses it all the time. Our K-tape, instead of its, its actual use, which would be for a joint, he uses it for blister care. Athletic tape, it's okay. The reason why I don't like athletic tape is your feet get wet and it just kind of rolls up. It kind of, for me, it doesn't work. Moleskin works. And then they do sell these Dr. Frederick's Better Blister bandages. I have mixed success. I have the best success with these strip ones that are pictured.
Alisa, we're getting a number of questions.
Oh, okay.
Surprise, a number of questions about blisters. Mia asked a question about if you put duct tape on that blister that you've drained and the duct tape comes off, won't it tear the skin off the top of the blister? So you have to remove it very carefully.
Right. So that's why, like, let's go back to that one. This one. So this one, if you put can you guys see my pointer?
I can't.
Okay. All
Nope.
right. If you put a bandage over the blister area, so like a Band-Aid over the blister area, and then put a piece of duct tape over the whole thing. That's what I mean. You have to have something in between the duct tape and the blister. So don't put duct tape directly over that. You're going to treat it like an open wound. So you'll want maybe a tiny piece of gauze or something, and then put duct tape over it. Does that make sense?
That's good. Joe had a question about the 2-sock approach, thin inner, thick outer.
No, that's a good, great suggestion. You can have what they call a liner sock. You can put on a liner sock and then put your socks over it. Yeah, that's great. That works really well.
And then Catherine asked the question, any suggestions for bandaging blisters if your feet are wet a lot?
Oh, yeah, that's a rough one because, yeah.
And I could help you with that one because there's another blister dressing product that we really like, and it's made by Band-Aid, and it's an osmotic dressing, and you leave it on for about a week. And we've had great success with that. It protects feet that are wet. And
this is what that is, the Better Blister bandages. They're osmotic.
Yeah, and Band-Aid makes one as well, and had great success with those.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah. Moleskin. Yeah. Okay. So the Zen toes, I use those because I had plantar fasciitis in one foot, and now one of my toes kind of sticks up. It's like a hammer toe, and the Zen toes protect the top of the toe. And actually it protects from blisters from forming between the toes as well. Any more questions?
Someone's asking who's the host of this webinar, and it's Idaho Trails Association and Kelly.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, food. Tom, take it away.
All righty. Well, now that we've talked about blisters and your feet and how you can make yourself miserable, what we're going to do is talk about something that's more fun, a whole lot tastier. So we're going to talk about food. And food is the fuel that you're going to use while you're backpacking. And it's going to be the heaviest thing in your pack if you're out for more than a couple of days. And just as a rough assumption, we're going to talk about how you can refine that number. Assume it's going to be 2 pounds per day. So if you're out for a 7-day backpack, that's 14 pounds of food. And what we want to do is talk a bit about how to pick the right food. What you want to do is bring energy dense food. What that means is you want to get the most calories per gram. And for example, I think most everybody's used those really tasty tuna fish packets that you can get, and they're really tasty. They have a very low energy density. So there is a wonderful lady named Erin that has started a service called Backcountry Foodie. And at the end of the webinar, we'll have her website so you can avail yourself of her service. She really does a great job with this. So we'll talk more about that. Okay, so you have to bring the right food. My wife and I were down in the canyons in Utah for a month, and we bumped into some people that were doing the 800-mile long Hayduke Trail, and they had the worst darn food I've ever seen. It was full of candy bars, Pop-Tarts, and stuff that really wasn't the kind of thing that was going to last. So to bring the right food, you have to balance carbs, fats, and proteins. Carbs are the fuel food. 50 to 70% of your calories should come from carbohydrates, and they should come from complex carbohydrates. If you're not familiar with the concept, there's fundamentally two kinds of carbs. One are simple carbs, those are sugar, and sugar will give you a big energy boost and then a big energy crash. It doesn't last long. Complex carbohydrates last a long time. Examples of complex carbohydrates: whole grains, rice, and whole wheat bread. You can go online and look for examples of complex carbohydrates. And so I would encourage you to look for complex carbohydrates because they last longer. Fats, those are the highest calories per gram. When you go into looking at the nutrition labels on your food, you'll see things like bacon, really high energy in terms of calories per gram. Not necessarily good for you, but they're awfully tasty. Protein, you need protein to rebuild muscle. A lot of people say, okay, so how much protein do I really need? All of our recommendations are based on rigorous exercise, because that's what backpacking is, and trail work as well. And so for protein, plan on use your body weight in kilograms. So in pounds, divide it by 2.2, and that's how many grams of protein you'll need daily. So for example, if you're a 120-pound person, you'll need about 55 grams of protein each day to rebuild the muscle. So let's see.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So what the other thing about bringing the right food is bring food that won't spoil. Again, one of these hikers on the Hayduke Trail had some cheese that was not the kind of cheese that could be unrefrigerated, and it was a science experiment by the time they got to us. So brings food that won't spoil.
Kelly, can you help us with the comments?
Yes, I'm working on it.
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, no worries.
Just ignore it for now.
Okay.
Okay. So how much food and how much energy you're going to need each day? Some estimates, somebody is moving a cursor around. I don't know if that's one of us. Anyway, some estimate 4,000 calories per day for men and 3,500 calories per day for women. That's a good rough guideline that lets you understand what it's going to take to fuel your body as you're doing rigorous exercise. Backcountry Foodie that I mentioned a bit ago has a very sophisticated calorie estimator, and what I've found is it actually generally estimates a little bit higher than those guidelines for people like me who are larger. In any case, set a daily calorie goal. How many calories are you going to bring? So what you want to do to put all of this together is, the neat thing we have is we have nutrition data on the packages of food. And here, for example, is that seafood, the tuna fish that I had mentioned. You'll see that the serving size is, that serving size 71 grams, and it provides 100 calories. That's pretty darn low calories per gram. Peanut butter, for example, provides about 5 calories per gram. So what you want to do, use the nutrition data on the package, do the math, figure out where you get the biggest bang for the buck, and then make a food plan. And in that food plan, you'll want to add up all of the calories that you have in the different foods you bring and make sure you have enough. I did a 31-day backpack in the Wind River Range about 10 years ago. Didn't come out for 31 days, and it was a great diet plan. I lost a whole lot of weight because I didn't bring enough calories. The other thing you have to do is bring the food that you will eat. If you have a food that's very energy dense, but you don't like that food, it does you no good at all. It just provides ballast in your pack. Try the food before your big trip. I use a lot of freeze-dried dinners because I like those freeze-dried dinners, and there's so many different brands and flavors today. There's some of them I really like, but try them before the big trip. We had one food on one of our trips that was, I still remember, it was called Black Bart's chili. And it was so hot, it would take paint off of your spoon. And so try the stuff before you go on the trip. And then the other thing is, eat what you bring. You shouldn't be bringing back a whole lot of food at the end of your trip. You should always have a little extra in case something happens. Some of our ITA trips, for example, will go on week-long projects where we fly into the backcountry. And if the plane can't come and get us after a week, we may be stuck for a couple of days. So on those kinds of things, we bring a little extra food. But when you bring the food, eat it. So make sure you're getting that energy every day.
And
then the next thing we wanted to talk about is cooking. One of the things that I like to do is I like to minimize cooking. The reason I minimize cooking is because cooking takes fuel. Fuel is heavy. I use a canister stove. I also have the MSR gasoline stoves that I use in the winter, but for nice weather backpacking, a canister stove is nice. I also, when I'm solo, I use a solid fuel stove, the little Esbit stove with a solid fuel pellet. And we'll talk about those more when we do some of the equipment in the next session. But the canister stove is easy, it's simple. My wife and I go on a week-long backpacking, and it takes one canister for us, one of the 13-ounce canisters. And then your stove should have a built-in lighter, one of the piezoelectric lighters. Pots today are very lightweight. We use titanium pots as opposed to aluminum. Bowls, plates, bowls, and cups. We don't carry plates, we don't carry bowls, but we do carry a cup. Utensils of the long-handled spoon because it's easier to get the food out of the bag. So what we do is, the reason we don't carry plates and bowls, by the way, we do ultralight backpacking. The reason we don't carry plates, bowls, and is because we use plastic bags that we can put boiling water in, stir the meal up, and then eat it out of the bag, and then we can clean the bag. So we like a simple canister, a stove, and a titanium pot. And so, just to be very specific about gear that we would recommend, Soto makes the Windmaster stove. It's 2.5 ounces, costs $68. The lighter, the piezoelectric lighter, works every time. MSR makes a similar stove, but their lighter doesn't work very well. It's a canister. Make sure you check compatibility. There are some canisters that there used to be available that didn't fit all the other stoves, but I don't think those are around anymore. But in any case, make sure you check the canister to make sure it's compatible with your stove. The pots we use are the Evernew Ultralight Titanium. GSI makes a great 12 ounce capacity cup that only weighs 1.8 ounces. And we use the long handled titanium spoon. By the way, keep your stove out of the dirt, especially if you're in an area with glacial silt, which is very, very fine, or if you're down in the canyon country where we just were because of the ultrafine sand down there, it can plug the orifice in your stove and then it's kaput. You can't fix that in the field. Another thing is you can check Outdoor Gear Lab. It's outdoorgearlab.com for reviews on backpacking gear, including stoves and pots, tents and sleeping bags and all that kind of thing. And in session 2, we'll be talking about more of that kind of gear. Okay. I believe Alisa.
Yeah.
Oh, no, there's, well, the types of stove. You guys know about the liquid fuel stoves and this is the MSR pocket stove, but or a canister stove. And this one over here is the jet boil with the reactor system. I don't use those because they're heavy.
All right.
Okay, Alisa.
So kind of not really switching gears, but it kind of good segue between food and then leave no trace principles. So there's 7 principles of leave no trace. If you've not heard of this, this is a big push to keep our trails and outdoor areas that we recreate in clean and pristine for other visitors, and make sure that we're not like invading on wildlife and such. So plan ahead, which is what we've been talking about through safety, and then the 10 essentials. And let me move this thing. And prepare. And that means like, so the reason why I plan ahead and prepare is that if there's let's say you get lost, there's probably a high probability that you would need rescue, and that requires people to go like barrage searching for you, and they're walking not on trails and such. So they're disturbing the areas that really don't require people to be walking on, and they don't that it's just not good for those areas, like cryptobiotic soil areas, for example, or owls that burrow owls that nest in the ground. I mean, you could be walking on those things. Same with travel and camp on durable surfaces. That means follow the trails, camp in areas that people have camped in before. Don't make your own. Dispose of waste properly. We'll talk in depth about this in a minute. Leave what you find. If you're a rock collector, how about if you just take a picture and leave the rock? If you love that flower, how about if you just take the picture of the flower and leave the flower for somebody else to enjoy? Minimize campfire impacts. Campfire impacts are like ubiquitous. People love campfires. They go they go backpacking, they want a campfire. That's fine. But make sure you put a campfire into a campfire ring that's already set up, not a ring of rocks that some camper has put around prior, but a camp ring. Or think about bringing a fire pan if you want a campfire, or just don't do it. Just pretend, just enjoy the noise of the outdoors and just the ambiance. Respect wildlife. How many people have heard about all the gorings from people getting too close to the buffalo in Yellowstone? I mean, I hear about this all the time. I remember hiking towards the coast on a Northern California trail, and there was a giant moose, and people would get within 5 feet of that moose. Moose are more dangerous than bear. I mean, they can trample a person. They don't see well, and so they'll just trample them. And just, we're invading their habitat when we backpack. I know that sounds mean, but we're like hiking across their home. And so let's respect wildlife and then be considerate of other visitors. This means, here's an example. You get to your backpacking destination at, say, 3:00 in the afternoon. You set up your camp. You're sitting down to eat dinner. You get dinner done. Now you're gonna get in your tent and go to bed. And then suddenly you hear bongo drums from across the lake. I mean, really? Somebody decides that they want to share their music with you, and you just wanted to go to sleep or listen to the wildlife kind of chirping around. So just be considerate of others. So I'm sure all of us have seen this. Toilet paper strung around. If you bury your toilet paper, animals dig it up, maybe it blows around, and this is what you get. So here's this is just a quiz. You don't have to answer it. It's kind of rhetorical. So how long do the following take to break down in the environment? Orange or banana peel? 2 years. How many of you have ever seen an orange or a banana tree in our forests? Okay. Apple core. Apple core is one of those things that you're like, hey, this'll decompose in a short amount of time. Yeah, 8 weeks is a little shorter than 2 years, right? But how many of you have seen an apple tree in the forests? I mean, it's better than this one, chewed gum. How many of you have seen squirrels with gum on their little hands? It's kind of gross. And this is an exaggeration, but it does last a very long time. And then of course, toilet paper. A lot of people tell me, oh, I can just put the toilet paper on the ground because it's paper, it decomposes. Yeah, it takes 1 to 3 years. And in Idaho, it's longer because we're in a desert. Yeah. Okay, and so that's just where I got those images. But in all cases, for leave no trace, especially for going to the bathroom and such, there are 4 main objectives. You don't want to contaminate the water. You don't want to make a mess so that people see it, right? Social and aesthetic impacts. You don't want, especially don't want to spread disease. And you want to maximize decomposition. So if you can't meet any one of those, including the apple core, it's best to just pack out that waste. And that includes your toilet paper. So we'll talk about that. Can you use camping toilet paper like what you buy to use in camp trailers? Good question. Do you know the answer to that?
Having just come back from a month in an RV, yes, they make special RV toilet papers that's supposed to decompose easier, but still we recommend that you pack out your used toilet paper. And the reason for this is, I mean, it's absolutely disgusting in some of our backpacking areas now. I was in one of the lakes basins in the White Clouds last summer, and there were piles of poop and toilet paper all over the place.
Ew.
And so what's going to happen is the Forest Service will eventually tell us we're going to have to bring wag bags, which means you're going to pack out the toilet paper and the poop. So we need to get people to bury the poop and pack out the toilet paper.
Yeah, so some of the key things about how to poop in the woods is it has to be 200 feet, about 70 steps. So that's pretty easy to remember. 70 steps away from water sources, trails, and campsites. It needs to be out in the open. A lot of people want to poop under a tree or next to a rock or under a rock or something. It needs to be out in the open. You know, of course, you don't want to poop in front of people, but rich soil in the sun. That's the best way to decompose the poop. And then it needs to be about 6 to 8 inches deep and 4 to 6 inches wide. The hole you dig, you kind of aim well. Once it's done, you cover it over, you put leaves and sticks over it, and then you take a plastic bag and you put your used toilet paper in there. I know that sounds gross, but you got to pack out your toilet paper. It's just gross to see it. And don't try to burn it. Some people say, oh, I burn mine. I don't even know how they do that because it's wet. So they only burn the dry stuff, and then the poopy stuff is still left. So you still have toilet paper there. So definitely pack it out. The next slide is actually a suggestion on a TP toolkit. So a large Ziploc bag, toilet paper put into a Ziploc bag. And if you bring wet wipes, because a lot of people will use wet wipes, put that into a Ziploc bag. And then my husband and I, we always carry extra sandwich bags, like 4 or 5 of them. And then a trowel, a shovel, and then of course hand sanitizer, because you always want to wash your hands, actually before and after doing the duty. We can, if you have questions about where to find a shovel, a good shovel, like we have a little metal one, it's a little heavier than we like, but there's great, I think ITA was giving away shovels last year. Those are great. Those are super lightweight, and you can just hang them on your backpack even. Peeing, best practices, same thing, 200 feet away from water sources, campsites, and trails. In the river, they suggest just peeing right into the water. And again, ladies, toilet paper, pack it out. Don't let it be strewn about. And again, I want to emphasize this, please wash your hands. It's best to use soap and water, but I realize that's not a luxury for a lot of backpacking trips. Use hand sanitizer before and after. Okay. And then this is going to be in Tom's presentation too, but we thought we'd mention it again. Tips for an easier trip: don't have stuff hanging off your backpack like this guy. In Patagonia, when Greg and I hiked down there were people literally carrying their pad and carrying their sleeping bag in their hands while they had a little backpack, like a day pack, maybe even a school pack. It was just so bizarre to me. Yeah, don't have stuff hanging off because it's going to make you unstable and you'll likely hurt yourself. And make sure you use your gear. Make sure you know how to use your stove before you go. Make sure you know how to use a water pump if you're taking it. Use a GPS, know how to use a GPS. Your inReach is a big one, because so the inReach, this is a lesson for us, me and Greg. We were like, oh, we'll bring this inReach. And then we were playing with it in camp and we realized we have no numbers in here. It's not like we could call anybody. I mean, if we got in trouble, we couldn't we'd have to actually just call hit the SOS button and get rescued because there was nobody to send a message to. So make sure you have the actual numbers and the contacts in your inReach before you leave home. Likewise, navigation apps, make sure you've downloaded those maps that you're using. And footwear, again, use your boots and your shoes before you go a lot. Take care of your feet and have a route plan. Just don't wing it. And have fun, of course. I mean, backpacking is a hoot. I have seen so much in backpacking. It's awesome. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. inReach. It's no, it's not a satellite phone. It is a personal locator beacon, but it has the ability to send and receive messages. So there's actually even canned messages like in camp for the night. You just hit it and it sends to a certain person. So it takes some practice though. If you buy an inReach, let's see, there's the inReach, there's the Spot. Another one, a personal locator beacon would be a Spot, but you can't send and receive messages. It's only for emergencies. The Spot is. inReach is pretty useful. There's a whole presentation where Idaho Trails Association partnered with Idaho Mountain Search and Rescue on personal locator beacons. And so I'll try to find that and send it to Kelly and see if I can have her send that out, because it's a great presentation because it talks about the difference between personal locator beacons and what they can do and what the strengths and weaknesses of each one are. And then, so what's next? I know Tom's stuff isn't on here. I think we forgot to add that, but just think over what you've learned. If you have any questions, you can email me or call me or text me. Check out outdoorgearlab.com. They have really good suggestions about budget items. Set up a budget and buy your gear. Tom will talk actually a lot more about that in the next presentation. And go to idahotrailsassociation.org and look at the projects that are still open. I mean, and get yourself on the waiting list if you see one that you like, because there's always people that back out at the last minute. So it's always good to put your name on the waiting list. And get out there and enjoy. It's going to be a good summer. I'm positive of it. So, like I said, stay tuned for part 2. It's April 25th at 12 p.m. Well, 11 p.m. for the Pacific time people, like Tom. Tom is, yeah. And then in that one, you'll just learn what to carry, what kind of things to buy. You'll have a whole list of suggestions, and then how to pack your pack. And at the end of this one, there's resources as well. But we can also send out a list of trails that are for beginner backpackers. So. Like this one, personal first aid kit. Kelly this will just be part of this presentation that'll be sent out, so you can look at this. Tom will talk a little bit more about first aid kits, and then a list of resources, websites that you can go check out that have been really useful. Discount websites for gear. Here's some used gear websites as well. REI actually still, or now has a used gear Patagonia. I've bought some things from there. That's been really good. And anyway, let me see if there's any more questions. Okay. I think that's it. All right. Yeah, you'll get, I'm pretty sure, Kelly, we'll get slides to them.
Yep. I'll send a copy, a PDF copy of the presentation out to everybody. And yeah, we'll also send out a list, like Lisa said, of some awesome backpacking hike suggestions.
Yeah. And yeah, the second one will also be recorded and sent out. Yeah. Okay. Great. That was, oh, good. Yeah, petroleum jelly. Thank you, Trevor. Looks like it works for chafing too. That's a good tip. Awesome. All right. We'll see you maybe in person for Thursday and here again on the 25th for sure. All right. Take care, everybody.